Imagine opening your eyes in the dark, hundreds of dead bodies lying around you. You don't remember anything, not your name, not how you got here, and a mysterious woman is watching you from above, offering help but not saying a word. Is this a zombie apocalypse, a mad scientist's experiment, or something more sinister? Today, I'll tell you the full story of the highly underrated 2013 horror mystery film Open Grave, where every answer raises a new question and the ending will blow your mind. Ready? Spoilers ahead. Let's get started. Hi, today I am going to explain a horror mystery movie called Open Grave. Spoilers ahead. Take care and be careful. The movie opens in the dark, where a man wakes up and is terrified when he finds himself in a pit surrounded by a large number of corpses. The man is scared and does not remember who he is or how he got to this strange place. He then sees a woman watching him and begs for help, but she disappears. Moments later, the woman suddenly throws him a rope, and before leaving, the man finds a gun which he keeps with him. When he successfully exits the pit, he looks for the woman from earlier, but she is nowhere to be seen. He then walks through the woods and discovers a house with lights burning amidst the darkness. The man carefully prepares his gun and enters the house, where he sees several people arguing. He immediately points a gun at them and demands to know who he is and how he got here. Another man named Lucas also points a gun at him and accuses him of killing everyone in the pit. The protagonist then notices that the Asian woman who helped him earlier is among them, so he nervously asks if she knows him, but she remains silent. Soon, it becomes clear that they all woke up in this place with no memory, and they don't even know each other. It turns out that they found some ID cards and learned their names, which are Michael, Sharon, Nathan, and Lucas. However, they can't find the ID of the man who woke up in the pit, so they decide to call him John Doe. Then there's the Asian woman who acts like she knows them all, but unfortunately, she doesn't understand English and is mute. The group then realizes that they also have the car keys, but there are no cars around. Meanwhile, the mute woman tries to communicate by writing, but no one understands her writing. Next, the group begins searching around the house while the mute woman approaches Lucas and tries to communicate. She shows him her arm, which is covered in strange markings, and it turns out that he has the same markings. This confuses him, but just then, John calls him because he saw something on the fridge. There is a calendar taped there with the 18th marked on it, the day after tomorrow. Do they know what date today is? He demands to know what is going to happen on that date, but she cannot understand him, causing him to open it angrily. Later, the group finds a room filled with a lot of weapons, which scares everyone. Michael then takes a gun and he handles it very skillfully, which suggests that he may have been a police officer or a military officer or a gamer. The group now decides to rest for the day, but they soon notice that the mute woman is running alone in the forest, so Sharon, Lucas, and John immediately go after her, and they notice that the stars are looking very bright, which suggests that they are far from the city. Meanwhile, John has flashbacks in which he sees himself dragging the body of a woman with a seahorse tattoo. The group then notices a strong odor and is horrified when they see several bodies tied to trees. Back at the house, Nathan and Michael check out the books on the shelves, and Nathan is surprised when he realizes that he speaks Latin, French, and even Italian fluently. He also knows that all of these books are about medicine and human and animal anatomy, so Michael thinks that Nathan must be the owner of the house. Meanwhile, in the woods, the group soon arrives at a shed where they notice the mute woman feeding an old woman who is tied up and looks completely disheveled and sick. She immediately recognizes John and screams that he used her before he tries to attack her. However, John knocks him unconscious, and Lucas notices that there is a camera in the shed, which means someone is watching them. Sharon suggests that they help the woman, but John disagrees, thinking that she is tied up for some reason and looks dangerous. The next morning, the group decides that the best thing to do is to search for the cars so that they can get out of the place. The others move on while Michael and the mute order the woman to stay at home. Michael becomes very angry that they left him and believes that he could be valuable, but they refuse to listen. Next, Nathan, Lucas, Sharon, and John go into the woods where they again see several bodies tied to trees. Soon, Nathan starts throwing random rocks, and they soon hear a metallic sound in the bushes. The group becomes interested, and when they check, they find the cars hidden there, which fills them with hope. Back at the cabin, Michael tells the mute woman that he feels a strong connection with her and that they may be a couple. She also looks at him fondly, but soon they are alerted by a scream in the distance. Michael tells her to lock herself inside and runs to check alone. He soon arrives at a field where he sees a sickly, disfigured man trapped in a fence, screaming for help. Michael goes to help, but the man suddenly starts laughing and attacks, piercing his neck with wires. Meanwhile, in the woods, the group inspects the cars and finds a group photo of all of them except John. This makes Lucas suspicious, and he argues that John is not part of their group, but John says that he may have taken the photo. The group then tries to start the car but realizes that the fuel is too low, which will not be enough to reach the city. As they are wondering what to do, the mute woman suddenly appears and approaches them, frantic. They follow her and find Michael, who is bleeding from the neck and on the verge of death. The panicked group desperately tries to help him, but the poor man is unable to survive and eventually dies. This worries everyone, especially the mute woman, who hints that perhaps they were indeed romantic partners. The crazy man in the fence suddenly starts screaming, so the desperate John shoots him dead. This triggers more memories in his mind, in which he sees himself loading a weapon and eliminating zombie-like people. After this, John and Sharon get into a car and decide to drive around looking for help. They soon arrive at a deserted building where they see a child running away. They try to talk to the child, but he locks himself in a barn and refuses to answer. John starts asking him for help, during which the child calls him by his real name, Jonah, and tells him to leave, saying, "They're coming tomorrow." A shocked Jonah wonders how the child knows his name and demands more answers, but the child refuses to talk any further. This makes Jonah very angry, so he tries to break the lock with the gun and starts shooting at the door. But Sharon finally stops him and says, "Don't hurt the child, he's just a child." She then touches Jonah's face, and the two feel a strong familiar connection towards each other. Meanwhile, at home, Lucas begins to feel strange, and several memories pop up in his head. The mute woman tries to comfort him, but he suffers from a severe headache. He then tells the mute woman that he recognizes her, but suddenly grabs her arm aggressively until Nathan stops him. Lucas finally calms down, after which Nathan thinks he is afflicted with some disease. He tells the mute woman that the group told him about the mad woman in the shed and asks her to show him the location. She agrees and takes him to the shed, and Nathan immediately recognizes that he has been there before, but they find the place empty while the mad woman has already left. As he starts walking, the mute woman tries to stop him, but he assures him that he knows where these roads lead. He decides to explore further while the mute woman goes back home. Nathan then finds a pair of glasses on the floor, and when he puts them on, he is flooded with memories of him arguing with someone. Elsewhere, the mute woman returns home where Lucas says he knows who she is and starts staring at him angrily. This scares her, so she runs into the attic and locks herself in. Lucas assures her that he doesn't want to hurt her and just wants to talk, but she refuses to open the door. Frustrated, Lucas starts looking for another way out and soon finds a door that leads to a cellar. He goes inside and soon finds a kind of lab with computers, equipment, and brains floating in tanks. There are also several CCTV cameras monitoring the various cells to observe the crazy people, but the cells now seem empty and they must have escaped. In another scene, Nathan arrives at a cell where he sees a crazy woman in a shed holding her dead daughter. Nathan immediately recognizes the woman and calls her Helen while apologizing for what happened to his daughter. However, the crazy woman suddenly attacks him, so Nathan quickly locks him in the cell. Back at Lucas, he finds a camera, and while watching the previous footage, he notices a video of Jonah injecting patients for an experiment. However, Jonah also mentions that the vaccine has a side effect, which is temporary memory loss. Lucas soon sees Jonah experimenting on himself and even on the mute woman, which fills him with rage. Meanwhile, Jonah and Sharon are returning home when suddenly a tree falls in front of the car. Jonah stops just in time, and he soon sees a group of loggers cutting down the tree and tries to talk to them. Sharon is scared and tells him to get back to the car, but Jonah ignores and tries to talk to the men. But unfortunately, they turn out to be infected people who waste no time chasing them with axes. Terrified, they quickly get in the car and drive away, but it doesn't start, which makes them panic. So Jonah gets out and tries to push the car with all his might when the aggressive men approach him. However, before they can hurt him, they stop for some reason. Jonah and Sharon then see bodies hanging upside down in the trees nearby. They quickly realize that the bodies are placed like scarecrows, and the victims seem to be afraid of them, possibly because of the stench. Sometime later, they return home where an angry Lucas immediately confronts Jonah about his strange experience. Jonah claims that he doesn't remember anything. While Sharon watches the video and is heartbroken, she checks her arms and realizes that she also has needle marks, while a frustrated Lucas knocks Jonah unconscious. He then drags the man to the pit of bodies, and although Jonah doesn't want to go there, he has no choice. Upon being thrown into the pit, he notices a dead woman with a seahorse tattoo, which brings up her memories. Later, Lucas returns home and frantically tells Sharon that they have to leave quickly. She asks about Nathan, but Lucas doesn't even remember who Nathan is. He starts acting very strange and tells both women that he will protect them both. When he gets aggressive, the mute woman runs away, but Lucas finally catches up with her. He pins her to the ground and tries to forcefully kiss her. So Sharon comes and shoots her, but Lucas dodges the attack and runs away into the forest. After that, the mute woman runs to the pit and throws the rope again, managing to save Jonah. The man then realizes that something big is going to happen tomorrow, so he decides to go to the child again in search of answers. However, when he gets there, he finds the door open and the child is nowhere to be seen. Next, Jonah drives off when he comes across the child and his family, who are preparing to go somewhere and are getting things out of a broken-down car. He stops them and asks what is going on, so the child's grandmother tells him to move away. She says Jonah hurt her entire family with his needles and that he should go. Jonah asks what he did to them, but the woman just gets in the car and drives away. Later, Jonah checks the abandoned car and finds many vials of the vaccine there, which triggers another flood of memories. He remembers that he gave them to a man and instructed the army to deliver them. Confused, Jonah checks the car further and soon finds a picture of him and Sharon, which proves that they were a couple. Then suddenly a car crashes into his car, and it turns out to be Lucas, who seems to be losing his mind. Jonah then says that he remembers that he was a doctor, but he wasn't hurting anyone. He was just helping infected people who were infected with a deadly virus. Jonah then realizes that the dose has worn off on Lucas, so if he is injected, he can return to normal. He tries to help the man, but Lucas doesn't listen and attacks him. In a desperate attempt at self-defense, Jonah grabs a rock and hits Lucas in the head. He then immediately tries to save his friend, but it's too late as Lucas is now bleeding profusely. In his final moments, Lucas finally remembers that he and Jonah were friends, recalling that he thanked the doctor for saving him. However, at one point, an infected woman with a seahorse tattoo attacks Lucas, so Jonah kills her. He then scalds Nathan for being responsible for closing the cells, which leads to a heated argument between the two. After that, Jonah started dragging the woman's body, but soon heard from his group that the other infected had also been freed. When the group was attacked, Jonah told them to lock themselves in the house and inject themselves so that they would recover. At that moment, one of the infected bit Jonah, so he fell into the pit. Jonah had to inject himself so that he would not be infected because he had been bitten. He knew that he would not remember anything when he woke up, but it was the only option. In the present, the group begins to remember everything, so Nathan returns home and quickly hugs Sharon, who also regains her memories. But soon, the house is home to the infected, who try to attack aggressively and are no longer afraid of the bodies. Both defend themselves well, but soon run out of bullets, so Sharon decides to leave a note for Jonah in case they don't escape. Elsewhere, Jonah also runs out of fuel, so he starts running towards the house only to be confronted by several victims. But then suddenly, a helicopter comes from nowhere and opens fire, eliminating the victims. It turns out that it is the morning of the 18th, and Nathan finally remembers that this was the day the rescue team came to save them. He happily leaves the house, waving his hands and shouting that they came and that he is still alive. However, the soldiers are ordered to finish everyone off, and they shoot Nathan badly while Jonah arrives just in time to see this. Sharon and the mute woman also see this and get scared, so they run for cover. Next, Jonah and Sharon meet again, and the man is worried because it turns out that Nathan was his brother. The two start to run while the mute woman hides herself very well, and the soldiers cannot find her. But unfortunately, Sharon is soon attacked by an infected woman and badly stabbed. Jonah now starts to panic, so to prevent the soldiers from shooting, the two have no choice but to jump into the pit of bodies. To deceive the soldiers that they are dead, Jonah injects Sharon with the vaccine again before injecting himself. This means that when they wake up, they will not remember anything and will all go through the same thing again. Sharon gives him a note and says that next time he has to remember everything and make things right. The two express their love for each other before passing out. After a while, the soldiers arrive and start throwing the bodies into the pit, including the child who warned Jonah yesterday. Sometime later, Jonah wakes up with no memory, while Sharon appears to have died from her wounds. Jonah wakes up and doesn't notice the note that has fallen to the ground. The confused man begins to scream for help, so the mute woman arrives and throws the rope again to pull him out. At this point, we learn the contents of the note in which Sharon reveals information about the plague, and it turns out that only the mute woman is immune to the disease. Sharon therefore begs Jonah to protect the mute woman at all costs because she is humanity's last hope. Unfortunately, Jonah has no idea and will have to piece everything together again. The movie ends with Jonah and the mute woman standing on the edge of a pit, looking at a vast open grave filled with thousands of corpses.